Welcome, 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 everyone. I'm Carol Fitzgerald from Reading Group Guides, a website from the Book Report Network, and the host of the Book Reporter Talks to Video podcast series. I want to welcome you to our Bookaccino Live book group event, where our guest this evening is Amy Neff, and we will be talking about her debut novel. It's hard to believe this was a debut novel. It is so well done. The Days I Loved You Most, which is a Book Reporter Bets On selection. And this is what I said about it in my Bets On commentary. This is a beautiful story about a 60-year marriage between two people who feel they can't live without each other. But it's so much more than that. It's about falling in love, the ups and downs of a long marriage, and what mature love feels like, as well as those early heady days. So the format tonight is going to be as follows. And let me start by noting that we are assuming that everyone here has read the book. Yes, this is that kind of a book club. We're not just serving wine. We're going to be talking spoilers. So if you haven't read the book, you may have to close your ears at some sections, but we're really going to get into a lot of the details of the book, and because we figure you've had enough time to read at this point. I'm going to begin with a discussion with Amy, and then one of our readers, Debbie Moore, who a lot of you know have been here before, will be joining us to talk live about The Days I Loved You Most. And then we're going to take questions from the audience from the Q&A. So as the evening goes on, please drop your questions into the Q&A down below, not into the chat area, because we're not going to be looking for questions there. Our fabulous voice of God, Tom Donadio, will be going through the Q&A, seeing what hasn't been asked before, and jumping on to do that. And the questions are only going to be shared with him. So just keep dropping your questions in there. So, with all that housekeeping behind us, let's welcome Amy to the stage.
Hi,
Welcome,
Carol.
Amy.
Hi, everyone.
So good
Thank you
to
all
see
for
you.
having me.
I know.
It's so good to see you too, Carol.
Oh, it's been like how long ago since we started talking about this book? Like 2
I
years?
know.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's been 10, so two feels short. We'll get to that. It's been a long road to here. But yes, you and I have been together for, I think, 2 years already.
2 years of
Yeah,
preparing for the
yeah,
book to come out, looking at the cover, looking at the title. It's just been amazing, amazing.
yeah.
So let's start with you giving us, in case anybody's read the book not recently, a little overview of what The Days I Loved You Most is about.
Sure. So, The Days I Loved You Most is a love story, and it takes place over a 60-year time span. It's a story of Joseph and Evelyn, who have been together for their entire lives. And Evelyn receives this tragic diagnosis, and they decide that they want a say in how their story ends.
Perfect. Then it's exactly like looking at this huge marriage and what they're going to do. You're so young. How have you been able to write? I mean, you're in your early years of being married, be able to
Mm,
write about a long marriage and hit so many of the ups and downs. And I mean, it's not all like fabulous. There are days that are not,
mm.
they're a little bit darker. Tell us how you were able to do that.
So I actually started writing this book even younger. So I was in my early 20s when I started writing. So this is not the usual choice, I think, for someone in their 20s to pick characters in their 70s. But I really wanted to tell a love story from beginning to end. That was really important to me. And so to do that, I needed to tell story ages that I had not yet lived. And so I did a lot of different things. I think I've always been a like sponge. I think I've always just been really aware of dynamics and perspectives and things going on around me. So I think that's played into, I was always called an old soul, even as a young kid, And so I think that's definitely part of it. But I also did a lot of emotional homework. So I read a lot about um, hospice care, and I read about end of life and people who were given a short time to live. And I read a lot in that canon, really. And I wanted to make sure that experience didn't feel like me guessing at what that would feel like or a caricature of what that would feel like. And I also did a lot of reading about just being at a different age. I read about dating in your 70s. I read about, there's this great book called Begin Again, Eve Pell, who talks about dating and later in life. And so just a lot of different things. I tried to put myself in different shoes. And I also had a sensitivity reader read the book. She was in her late 60s at the time. And so she just to make sure I didn't have any blind spots of where I missed, I wanted to really get that right.
Ooh, how smart, because you want
Yeah.
to make sure that the feelings were all right throughout the entire book. Like, how would they be feeling at
Right.
this phase and whatever. All right,
Right.
smart. So the setting was also important to you. And talk to us about the setting, because the beach, being there, that's got a whole history for you as well.
It does. It does. So I always say this book is not my family story, but it's my family place. So I was very lucky. I grew up going to the same little strip of shoreline along the Connecticut shore, kind of like the Jersey Shore for a lot of, for Carol and a lot of people I saw on the chat are Jersey as well. You have this place that is nostalgic for you, that you have shared memories with your family. Maybe you spent your childhoods there. Maybe it's not a beach. Maybe it's just like someone in your family's home. But it has that like feeling of safety and belonging. And so I wanted to capture that feeling because for me, it was this little town in Connecticut, and I fictionalized the town. So it's Stony Brook is a made up place. Unfortunately, you cannot visit, but there are a lot of places that are just like it. And what I liked about fictionalizing it was two things. I wasn't restrained by the reality of one town, but also it makes it so that way readers can feel like it's their town. It can be, a myriad towns in Connecticut. It could be in Rhode Island or the Cape or Nantucket. I feel like there are just so many places where people felt like they saw their own town in the book, which made it really special.
Yeah, and I think everybody, when reading this, will think of some childhood moment and where you
Yeah,
were, like at a beach or a pool. We belonged to a swim club when I was growing up, and what it was like to be there, and what it was like to be, and then places where you were with extended family. Remember when we first did our first interview, I was talking about having family dinners in my aunt's backyard and what that
yeah,
was
right,
like, with all the
right,
different foods, and the kids were all on their own. I mean, it was more like the adults had their things that they were doing according to generations, and the kids were just playing the whole time. And it was sort of
right.
like ignoring the adults. They were just doing their own thing, and
And
kind of
and
freedom.
I think yes, and I think it was a very idyllic childhood for me, and I'm sure for the adults that it wasn't as perfect, right? But you have these rose-colored glasses for when you were a kid, and I think Evelyn and Joseph definitely have that in the early part of the book, and then things obviously shift, and we'll get into that. But I wanted to capture that feeling of like how beautiful it feels to belong, but how it can also trap you and keep you
Yes.
sort of suffocated too. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And you're also wondering like what everybody's saying about you and what is happening and what's going on. And as a
Yeah.
kid, you don't see any of that. You don't see any of the tension. You're just there. You're just being a kid. And then you're really showing like, okay, this is what people were thinking, you know?
Yeah, family dynamics are fun to play with. I really enjoyed writing the different dynamics between the siblings and the characters because yeah, that's like the real stuff. That's what's fun to play with.
That's really, and also you did start this so long ago. Going along, did you go back and make major changes, or did you, like, as you grew up, as you saw more, did you make
Mhm.
changes, or does the story pretty much like flow? This is the way you started it.
So yes and no. So the story 100% grew with me. So this book, I said 10 years. It's true. It's been with me for a third of my entire life. And so the ideas of love and marriage and relationships certainly evolved and matured, I think, with me. As I became married and as I had my own kids, I have three kids. And so I definitely think a lot of that perspective that I gained shows through the later drafts. But then
Mhm.
there were also major changes, like the ending changed, which is fun. I can share that with you when we get later into the discussion. I'm sure someone will ask about that. The ending changed at one point, so it wasn't always cut and dry. I knew exactly how it would end. That did change. I added characters. I revealed Evelyn's diagnosis differently in different drafts. So earlier drafts, the reader knew something was wrong, but didn't find out what she had until
Mhm.
later. And then I had drafts where the reader knew from the beginning, but the kids didn't know until later. And so, yeah, a lot of things like were revealed differently, played out differently, and that ripples through the entire book when you make a huge change like that, especially how it and ultimately turned out with the first chapter. Everybody knows, and
Right.
Evelyn reveals it, even though she doesn't want to. So that completely changed everything for the every character. They have new information, they have new ways to react, they have new things to process, and so those major changes part of that is what took me the time. I went through and made different artistic choices at different times with different drafts and then had to play those out. And books are quite long, so it takes a while to then rewrite the whole thing. Yeah.
It's exactly. I remember you were thinking originally to just have it from Evelyn and Joseph's point of view, and then you
True.
decided to add the children in. Where did you come for that decision that you could tell more of a story, or what was it from, what were you seeing there?
So I actually worked with freelance editors, a few different freelance editors. The editors you work with in the publishing houses are your like those are my editor. That's my editor, right? But then you can also hire editors along the way to give you a second set of eyes that are um, really you can have your friends read it and stuff, but you have these eyes that are really qualified eyes to give really qualified opinions. So I worked with an editor who suggested that I put in the perspectives of the children, and I was very um, uncertain if that's the route I wanted to go because I really wanted to make sure that it was still a true love story and true to Joseph and Evelyn's story. I didn't want to lean too far into family saga or get like you could do another 500 pages if you go into all of the different
Yeah.
children and like all of their perspectives. And so I wasn't sure, but then I just decided to play it out and see how it worked. And I went to write those three chapters. So each of their children gets one chapter, and they poured out of me. It's like they've been banging on the door saying, like, please.
Oh, I think you're frozen. Let's see. Is everybody seeing her frozen? Tom, are you seeing her frozen too?
No.
Yeah,
Okay, there you
she is
are.
frozen.
Okay, you're
Oh,
back.
no, we're
Okay.
back.
Oh, okay. Am I
Yes,
good
you were
now? You
saying
can see
about
me,
the
hear me?
children. They were each have their own different views and their stories, and they come in.
Yes. And so, yeah, they really like poured out of me. It's like they'd been begging to talk this entire time. And so they had a lot to say. And when I went to write those chapters, those flowed out basically first draft into the book. They came out full because I feel like I had been with these characters for so long. Even though I hadn't written in their voices, I knew their voices. I knew who they were. I knew exactly what they thought and felt. I've known them since before they were born, you know? And I knew their grandparents and their parents. I know a lot about them. And so when it came time to write their voices, it was really fun. And those are actually some of my favorite chapters of the book now.
And when you were writing their voices, you knew that like who was going to be worried one way, who would think another way, just because you knew the characters well enough. Whereas if you had done them at the beginning, you might not have
Yeah.
had that knowledge about who they were to have them bring their stories forth the right way, not the right way,
Oh,
a way that makes
completely.
sense. Yeah.
What I would say about all of the different revisions and what I think with the gift of having this much time with this book is that I got to reveal things on like a deeper level and uncover layers over time. And so I really was able to understand these people as full round people versus just like this is Thomas is successful and he is cold and like you had to get deeper and figure out what are his motives, what is his relationship like with his wife, is he actually cold, what are their struggles that they've gone through that dictate how he processes what's going on with his family, what was it like when he was a kid, like all of those things. I wanted to write characters that feel like whole real people because they've lived entire lives. And a lot of it you get to see on the page, which is fun when you're writing that much of a time span. You can really dive into little tiny memories that, like, as real people, they inform different things in your life later on.
And it was interesting too because I didn't think they were just one chapter of each until I went back and looked after we spoke last time.
Right. I've heard that
It
before.
feel like they've been so much in the book, and I'm like, wait a second, did they only have a chapter each?
Yeah.
That was very, very interesting. Was there a favorite time frame that you wanted to write about? Was there a favorite time frame that you enjoyed?
I loved writing the 40s scenes. It's like so romantic. And I think there is, this sort of idealized idea of what that time was like, writing love letters and all those things. So that was fun to research. And I did a lot of research on that time frame, and just be in an entirely different setting. So I would say time frame wise, I enjoyed that a lot. But I also really enjoyed pushing the characters in new ways in like the 60s,
Mhm.
with Sam and different things. And that was a character that came later. He was not an original character. So there was a lot of times where it was interesting it almost felt like I was writing different people sometimes, like they're different chapters of their marriage is how I sort of thought of that as like their 40s chapter, and then they have their Boston chapter, then they have their chapter when they have young children, and then they have their chapter where they're dealing with Jane, and then they're, then their grandparents. And so just like everyone's lives, there's different phases and chapters, and it felt very fun and interesting to go in and out of those with all my characters.
I hadn't thought about this before, but do you think you're ready for more of the different phases and seasons of your life to come because you've
Oh,
written about characters like this? I mean, think about it.
I've always been ready to just be like 70, Carol. I'm ready for a knit blanket and I'm ready for a good cup of tea and just, yeah. So
You're there.
no,
You're ready.
I do think writing the book has made me, I'm a pretty hyper aware person, I think, of how fleeting things are. And I think this book has only made me more aware. And in a good way, I think you can only be appreciative and take these things in if you're aware that they're not forever, right? So we were talking before the call. I have a 4-month-old baby. I just had my third child, and so excuse me if my postpartum brain just like gives out halfway through this, but we'll do our best here. Um, but yeah, I think writing this and playing out an entire life through somebody else's eyes, there's no way you can't go back to your own life and feel just so thankful that you still are the age that you are and get to experience these beautiful moments with my young kids. It's really special.
And it won't be forever because you're realizing with your
No,
characters, it'll be the teens, the 20s, the 30s, and where things, you definitely get a different perspective by having written what you
yeah.
wrote.
But I think I wrote this book because that is my fear, that like you can't keep it. I think I've always just felt like I want to just keep it. And every phase of my life, I've enjoyed every phase of my life, and I think it continues to get better, and I'll enjoy each phase more and more. But you can't go back. I have this beautiful new baby, and I can't go back to my first baby at this age. Now he's a 6-year-old boy, and he's playing all these sports and running around and doesn't really want to be cuddling me the same way and all those things. And I remember the baby, but I don't have him anymore. And so, yeah, this book was my way of exploring what if a couple had some say in this? What if you got to have a say, at least in your own ending? So yeah, it's like, all writers just like play out their own fears and the things that they're obsessed with. And so for me, it's just like keeping time.
Keeping time, keeping time. Was the ending
Yeah.
always like this? Was the ending always? No.
No, so we can talk spoilers so I can share.
Yes.
So for those who haven't read, sorry, we're going to share the ending. But if you have read, you know that uh, at the end, Evelyn has a stroke and then she passes naturally. And then Joseph decides not to go through with the plan. And so originally, my very original ending, because I was very set on this beginning to end, a love story from beginning to end, beginning to end. So I was very set on an ending. And so my original ending, if you can believe it, I actually had him go through with it at the end. And I had this editor that I worked with who was lovely, and she said, "Do you want to maybe rethink this? Like it's not a satisfying ending." And I was like pretty sure that I wanted to keep it because I felt like beginning to end. That was my original structure, that was the original vision.
So Amy, I think you're frozen for a
Oh
second. Here we go.
no.
That's okay. That's okay.
I'm so sorry. It says my
So,
internet is perfect. I don't know what is going
Tom, are
on. I'm
you
so
seeing
sorry.
it
Am
too,
I
or is
okay
it
now?
just me?
Yeah, it did freeze up a little
Okay.
bit.
All right. So it's not, well, we can edit. Don't worry about it. I can just tell the,
Hopped off my.
sir.
Okay. Am I better?
You're better. You're better.
Yeah, you're good.
And
Okay.
would
So
you just
sorry.
say that, I think we just go back to the little bit about the ending, like about a little bit about the ending so we can have it right.
Yes. So the did you hear what I said, what the
Uh-huh.
ending actually is?
Yes. Yeah. We heard that
Okay.
part. We heard that part.
Okay. And so the ending as it was I had an editor who suggested that I um make it so that sorry. So the ending, which part did you hear, Carol? I apologize.
You
You
told
heard
me,
that what
you told us that she said, have you thought about changing the ending? Have you thought
yes.
about like
Okay.
changing it so it's not like this? Yes.
Yes. And so, yes, I was very set on my beginning to end framework. And so, but then as I thought more about it and sat with it, the arc for Joseph is so much better if he does not go through with it. And truly, that is the part of the message, right? That there's more to live for and that he gets to enjoy his love for her even after she's gone. And so, yes, it was much more satisfying, beautiful ending, I think, for everybody versus how it had been. But what's interesting about it is that the chapter didn't change that much. So I wrote that final chapter from the first draft, And then I changed the ending entirely, but the chapter didn't change very much. I think there's like 4 or 5 lines that change. So it's very subtle changes in there, and it changed everything. But it was absolutely the right call. She was totally right. And I'm glad I made the change, but it was completely different before.
And I think it was surprising for me as a reader because Evelyn has a stroke. So it's sort of like when somebody gets a diagnosis like that and she says, I'm going to take my own life, you figure that's going to be the path. And then all of a sudden, whoa, like life got
Yeah.
in the way, literally. Life got in the way, literally, and something
Yeah.
else for her. And I think that there was a lot to say where that happened in the book as well. So, that's what I was seeing too. Okay, I think you're stuck again.
Let me switch to my
Okay, that's okay.
iPhone. Let me see if that makes it. If I go to my
It's okay. It could be like the time of night in your area, a storm. I mean, we're kind of used to this stuff.
is that better with my hotspot? Is that
Yeah,
clearer?
that's good. That's good.
Okay, I'll try that. I'm not
We'll
sure,
try that.
but
Okay, and I can go back to the
yeah.
question. It's what have you been hearing from readers? What are readers saying about the book?
This has been the best part has been hearing from readers. I've been getting so many messages from people, and it runs a gamut from people saying you remind me of my parents. This story is like I saw my parents love like this, and I had this recent loss, and this book is so meaningful to me because of that. Or I've also get a lot of messages from people saying that you told my story. Like I just got another email saying I feel like I was reading a biography. Like this is so true to my life, and I've gotten so many of those messages, which I think just speaks to the universal themes. Right, we all go through loss, and if we're lucky, we have love. And so I think that a lot of people see themselves in this book. And so I feel very grateful, and I get a lot of somewhat heavy messages from people sharing their love and their loss. And it means so much to me that people want to feel comfortable and vulnerable sending those things to me. But also that the book means enough to them to do that, to take the
Mhm.
time. And my favorite messages are the ones that people say, like, I've now like appreciate my marriage more or my life. And yeah, it's been really incredible.
Yeah, incredible kind of a feeling. Well, Debbie Moore is going to join us from Syracuse, New York, with a couple of questions. So, Debbie, you're on. Debbie joins us so many times. She's
Hi,
like
Debbie. Is my
our Uber
connection
reader,
better?
our Uber reader.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Can you see and hear me better now that I'm on the
Yeah.
new?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay,
It froze there for a
great.
second, but I think we're okay. So go ahead.
Okay.
Amy, I loved your book. I mean, it took me,
Thank you, Debbie.
I read it in 2 days. And
Oh my gosh, thank you.
I loved all parts of the story. And after, when I was thinking about it, I think, I really loved the part as I think Carol said, my favorite part was the children's story. Because I
Mm,
think because of my age, I'm in my 70s, it's like I know that someday I may have to have that conversation with my children. And what would
right.
that be like from my perspective? So I really enjoyed that part of the story very much. But I
Thank
wanted
you.
to ask you, did you ever think about writing the story with Joseph being the one who was sick and what Evelyn's reaction would be?
So it's a great question. I've actually gotten that question quite a few times, and I think the story doesn't work in the opposite direction at all. I think that there's something less interesting about a woman who wants to die for her husband, and I think it's somewhat, for whatever reason, more romantic for a man wanting to die for his wife. I just think that I want to write strong female characters, and I think that the reverse situation does not lend itself to that. Which is it's a funny thing, right? Because they should have this equal ability to love each other and be there for each other, but it just doesn't play out the same way, I think, on the page. And I also think that I don't know if we'd be having this conversation if it was Joseph. I don't know that Evelyn would be the one to say, I don't know,
Mhm.
I think that it's only able to happen the way it is because of the way their characters are.
Did you intend to write their characters as being so different because they were such different people?
Mm, I think that they are so closely tied for their childhoods and their shared values and their histories that if they were any more similar, I think it wouldn't have worked either. I think that they push and pull each other in important ways, and I think a lot of relationships are like that. I think that where someone grounds somebody, somebody else pushes somebody, and I think that's good. But certainly it caused a lot of conflict for them because they wanted different things, even though they also wanted the same thing. And so I think those things are what sometimes make like an interesting relationship. But yeah, it's a great question. I don't know that it was intentional, but I think it felt more true to life.
Did you have a favorite of the two of them? Did you have a favorite character?
You know, I go back and forth because I I love I love them both, and I feel so close to both of them. And I don't have a favorite. I enjoyed writing both of them. I think Evelyn is like she's more fun, more interesting in some ways to write at times, but also like Joseph it's just that he's just a lovable, he's there and he is steady. And so like there's beauty in that as well. But what's interesting is that I hear very different opinions on the internet about people really either disliking Evelyn or thinking Joseph kept her trapped and thinking he's the villain. And so it's fascinating the way people read it quite differently. And I think I'm sure in this group there's going to be equal people in the camps of Evelyn was selfish or Joseph was overbearing. And, some people will be shocked that how somebody could read it so differently. So it's been interesting to me that there's a lot of people who feel like Evelyn would, really disliked her. And so I worked to make her more likable actually through the drafts. That was consistently feedback I got over years and years. So this is the most likable she's getting. This is as far as I could take her. And some people, still have issues with her character, but I also think that's life and we're flawed humans and that's what makes it interesting.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, like I said, I
Thank you,
loved the
Debbie.
book. It was a beautiful story, and I can't wait to see what you write next.
Oh, thank you
Thanks.
so much. Thanks for reading.
Thank you, Debbie, for being with us as always. You're such a good reader, and always such good questions. There's this wonderful moment with the piano that I want to talk about with the book because now we can share this because now we can talk about, what the ending's like and whatever. So talk to us
Yeah.
about the piano and why that meant something. And at the same time, everyone, I hope you're getting ready for the questions and dropping them in the Q&A. You're almost up. Get close. Go ahead,
Awesome.
Amy.
So the piano was just like a vessel for me to have Evelyn have some of a more creative side. And so I was trying to figure out what I wanted her to be interested in. And like being a writer felt a little too on the nose, so I gave her music. I'm not a musician myself. I don't have any personal ties, with the exception of like some piano lessons I took when I was in first grade, which did not take me very far. But I did a lot of research. Again, there's so much research in this book. But I went to the Boston Symphony Orchestra and I toured with their one of their tour guides, and I sat through a performance and went backstage and got to talk through the concertos. The librarians that run they keep all of the sheet music and everything, and so it was really fun and interesting to learn that world and then to weave it in throughout. And you have obviously her chasing this big dream, but it was also how she processed music throughout the entire and how she processed emotion. So she'd be sitting in the car with Joseph and she'd realize that this song comes on, Desperado, that is so apt. And the lyrics are like exactly what she's going through with Jane. But she knows that Joseph, it means nothing to him, right? That he doesn't even listen to lyrics. This guy is completely oblivious. So she's having this moment and he is just sitting there like looking out the window. And so it's the way that they saw the world and what she hears and how she processes her environment around her. So giving somebody such a strong tie to something like music is just like a fun thing to play with as a character. Just like having the ocean and the beach as sort of a character in itself just gives you more to play with and to work with. And yeah, it was also an excuse to go watch the symphony. So not so bad.
It was such a special moment. It was just, kind of unexpected that that's what would happen. And it was just so perfect. Perfect. Did having your own children change your perspective, like as you were writing this book? Did that have a play here?
Sure, yeah. I so with my second child, I had two kids pretty quick back to back. I had two under two boys, in the middle of the pandemic, and I was writing this book, and I was getting just like, I was years and years of rejections on this book, which we can certainly talk about the journey to here. It was a long journey to here. And I went through like a pretty bad bout of postpartum depression and with my second son. And he was born in a blizzard and it like dead of winter, COVID baby, all these things. And so yeah, I think writing some of those scenes after that experience, through that experience, and then after that experience, I was able to much more deeply get in touch with what Evelyn was going through, because she's struggling. She's deeply struggling as a new mom. And that's part of what I wanted to show in the 50s, because certainly motherhood is challenging all the time, but in the 50s there weren't a lot of other options, at least in the US, right? The 50s in the US, there weren't a lot of other options. There was expectations for women to be wives and mothers, and so Evelyn didn't really feel, even though she did want children, she also wanted this other life. And so yeah, so to tie into like history with that, but then also things I had personally experienced, even though like I've always wanted children and I adore my children and love my children, had a very positive postpartum experience with my first. So I don't think I could have written those chapters in the same way had I not had that second experience. And now my third is just the best. And so yeah, you know, we're back to a good place, which is great. But I also think that it's just all of life. There's a great quote. There's all grist for the mill. Lin-Manuel Miranda says that all the time. Anything you go through is grist for the mill. It's something you can use on the page. And so I'm glad that I was able to honor that experience. That's so true for so many mothers.
Yeah, it's not all joy and roses. It's not. And it's interesting because it's still played that's what it is. After all this time, it's still played that everything's gonna be beatific. And you're just saying there's some. I remember my husband and I were at a garden center on Mother's Day, because of course I had to pick the world's worst day to go to the garden center. And we have a lot of friends who are having babies right now, and all my were becoming grandmothers, and they're all going, "Oh, they're so cute, they're so cute." And then there were a couple of 2-year-olds that were standing there, a 2 and a 3-year-old, and they were like, "I want this, I want that, I want the other thing." And my husband said, and I looked and I go, "And then they talk, and then they move, and we were just laughing because think of like here, you just put them here and they stay. And then all of a sudden they have what I call opinions about things.
Yeah, oh yeah. Lots of opinions in my house right now. Yep.
Lots of opinions. And you have 3 different opinions going on. And it's just really, really interesting. So
yeah.
On that note, Tom, do we have any questions from our voice of God, Tom Donadio, our editorial director?
Yes, we do have some good questions here. First off, Pam wants to know, and I think this is always a very interesting question, how did you select your title? Did you have any other titles before you landed on this one?
So this has always been the title, which is so rare in publishing. It's so rare to have a title for as long as I did. So what's funny about the title is actually it's the very first thing that came to me. So I started with the title. That's where it all began, and it's never shifted, which is so fun. And if you can picture, I was 22. I was in Central Park. I was visiting a friend of mine who was working in the city. I decided that I was going to write a novel. I had written another novel before this in college. I'd written something called, we call it in the business, a drawer book, meaning you write it and it goes in a drawer and no one ever sees it again. And so that's what I did in college. And it was something that I did as just for fun, which, you know, with all the free time people have in college to also take on these big projects. But it taught me that I wanted to do this and that I wanted to try again. And so I went to Central Park. I had this idea that I wanted to come up with the idea. And so I sat there with my notebook all day, and that was the first thing that came to me. And I mapped out the general structure and the characters and the premise all that day. And it's really like from that day, the soul of the book has never wavered.
Amazing.
Yeah, I don't know if I can replicate this, Carol. I would like it to happen again. I should go back to Central Park,
Yes.
you know, but now you have phones, and there was not like, I don't know, did I even have an iPhone? I had no distractions. There was nothing else to do. I had a notebook and a pen. So it was, if only we could get back to that.
You know, you might look at the baby and go, say something. Give me a line.
Yeah.
Something,
Yes,
please. I
yes.
need something. I need something.
Yeah, yeah. I think I also did not realize what I was getting myself into. I think had I known that I had chosen the most complicated structure possible in a book, with the long timeline and all the points of view. Like I just was like, this is how this should be fun. And so yeah, I went in completely blind. I'd always been a writer. I've always been a reader. I went to school for writing and all that. So I had, I have some bearings, but I had never written a novel with the attempt to actually get published. It was really something I did for myself. And so that's how it all started.
We have a question from Carol. Do you see yourself more in one character than another?
Evelyn and Joseph, I'm assuming, or maybe throughout all of them.
I think probably like any character. Do you see yourself, yeah, in
Okay.
one more than the other?
I think I'm all of them and none of them, which I think is probably true of all writers. I think because I spent so much time with them, they've really evolved to be their own people. I think a lot of times, at least me and maybe a lot of writers start writing someone who's very similar to them, just because it feels familiar and easy to do so, and then they shift off that, or maybe they write something completely different. But I think my characters sort of started more simply, and then as I got to know them, then they became completely different from me. But I think there are elements to them that are true to me as well, just from like my shared background at the beach and some of my views and values on family and different things. I'm sure that a lot of that is in there. But I don't feel like I'm any one of them, really. I think maybe even like at different parts of my life, I may have been more like some of them, maybe when I was younger and more naive, I felt more like Violet, or different parts of my personality probably have woven themselves into their characters at different points of their lives. But no, I'm not like it's not like me on the page anywhere. It's a good question.
Um, Question from GJ. Why did you think that Sam was necessary for the story?
So yeah, that's a great question because Sam was not in the story early on. So I had Evelyn and Jane, so Jane's the daughter, had a falling out that happens later in the book or later in the timeline, right? So Jane is in her teen years. And I had a sort of a vague reason why they had this falling out. And the editor that I worked with said I needed to give like a concrete something has to happen for such a deep fallout, for her to just go so off course, for her entire life to be really kicked off course. You need to have something really happen. And so Sam was a creation of needing an event and an issue between Evelyn and Jane, and it's also someone who shakes up the entire family. So they've been living at sort of status quo for a very long time. And so when you insert somebody into a situation like that, then you get to play and see how all the characters respond to that person. And so they all sort of fall in love with him at first. And then we quickly find out he's not like as great as he appears right away. But because you have this disruptor, you get to see different shades of characters that you wouldn't get to see otherwise. And you get to see the family in a totally new dynamic. So Sam, I know we all hate Sam, right? But like he was really important to write and really fun to write. And those sections came pretty quickly for me. Even and it seems like he was always there. Now that he's there, I can't imagine the sort of vague undoing. It definitely works. It doesn't, I don't think works as well without him. But I also get that people think it's sort of like, why did this have to happen in this beautiful love story? But I think things happen in love stories, and I think things happen in families. And I didn't want to just write this beautiful love story that never had anything happen to it. I think things are in many situations tested, or it doesn't have to be like the Sam situation, but people go through health things or loss, or there's different things that happen in life. And I've never met a family who hasn't gone through something, addiction, whatever it may be. So I just wanted to give them more opportunities to have real life conflicts and problems.
It'd be really funny if you wrote a book and it was, what if I married this other person? And each chapter was if you marry somebody different.
Yeah.
And thinking of people I dated, I'm like, oh my gosh, why? Why would that have ever worked? Why would that have ever worked? But it could be from each different. You're making me think now of how
there's the next book, Carol. Thank you.
There you go. There you go.
Title to give me. I'll take a title. I will stick with it for 10 years. We will move on.
All the lives I loved before. There you go.
There you go. It's so good. Wrap it up. Someone call my editor. We're good.
There we go. We're done. We're done.
I
So we
love it.
have an interesting question from Linda. She wants to know, do the characters ever emerge in ways that surprise you or feel like they have a personality that may reflect some subconscious aspects of your personality?
Okay, this is a very layered question and I love it. So I'm going to answer, I think what you're asking in the beginning is that have they emerged sort of like with their own voice and their own consciousness? Maybe that's what you're asking, but I'll answer that
Right.
part first. And so Malin. So Malin, I wrote her as a straight woman for so many years. I wrote her as a woman who just like can't be tied down and is doing her thing and is living and exploring and doesn't care about men. And then I was like, she doesn't care about men because she is not straight. Like it came to me, like it's like she had been telling me and trying to show me and was like, this girl is not getting it through her head, like who I am. And so it hit me like a ton of bricks one day. I was writing, I was like, oh my goodness. Like it's like she came out to me on the page. It was so, it was like a lightning strike. I can't even explain to you that I was like, of course, of course. And so, yes, that was the most it was such an amazing moment when that happened. And I was like, I'm so sorry, I haven't been paying attention. And so yes, that was one time where I felt like she had her own consciousness and then and made it clear. Can you repeat the second part of the question?
Yeah, or do you feel like they have a personality that may reflect some subconscious aspects of your personality?
I think that sort of plays into what I was saying already before, that I think that they're all a little bit part of me and none of me. I think a lot of the subconscious things, like some of my feelings on religion and sort of like this unknowing and through loss and different things that I've experienced that I've gone through and um, just that you question your understanding of the world. I think a lot of that probably is me and is in there. But I think it's also all me because it's all made up and it's all from my head. So I think it probably is a lot of subconscious. If I did some therapy work, I'm sure there's a lot in there. Yeah.
Um, So it's funny, before you even said anything about your editor, we had this question from Pam, and I know you touched on this at a couple of points, but Pam asks, can you talk about how you worked with your editor from the publisher? What kind of help and recommendations did you get? Did you cut any scenes that you had initially put in the book?
Okay. So I'll bring us back in time a little bit because to understand really what happened with my editor, you have to understand the whole picture. So it was 10 years in the making of this book. The first 5 years I was working on my own. It was totally merely a project for myself. I did not intend to publish. I just thought this was fun. And then something happened around the 5 year mark that I thought, I've been working on this for a really long time. I'm like, what if I tried? And so I spent the next 5 years trying to get a literary agent. So a literary agent is the gatekeeper between the writer and the publishing house. So you can't actually just send your book to HarperCollins. You have to actually have a literary agent who then pitches you to them. And so in those years of working on trying to get my agent, I went through many, many more revisions. I worked with those other editors, and just also it was the pandemic, and I was pitching this book about death and dying and illness, which really was a difficult sell, I have to be honest with you, at the time. So I was getting a lot of beautiful rejections from people saying, we love this book, we love these characters, and it's going to be a no. And so me time to make continue to uncover those layers which we've talked about. And so when I got to actually getting my book deal and working with my in-house editor, I had gone through 9 drafts or 8 or 9 drafts at that point with this book. And so I was very, very open to criticism, to critique. I really had kind of cut my teeth with these other editors. And but I also still held strong to the things that I didn't want to change. And so my editor was so lovely because she really did this thing where she did like so much trust for me. She just gave me high level, here's what I need you to do, and then you choose. And so she said, in general, I need more emotion and more lightness. That was the feedback, more emotion and more lightness. And so I got to then go in, which seems like that she wanted both, right? So I had to go into every scene where it was an emotional scene and like crank it up and then do the scenes where maybe I was staying in the sad place a little too long and then I had to pull back. And so it was a little bit of this like dance tango that I was doing where I can give you an example. I have scenes where you have to have them sad because some bad things are happening. But then there were scenes where they're just processing and you don't have to hit people over the head with the sadness of it because then it just gets too sad, right? It's already a sad premise. The book doesn't have to be sad all the time. And so there was a scene where I was writing Joseph and Evelyn having a conversation about how they were feeling. And it's the scene actually they have now after the biplane ride or before the biplane ride. And so I had them have that scene in a graveyard because they were going to say goodbye to their loved ones. And that was the original scene. And that was an easy opportunity to say, they don't need to do that. Like, this is already kind of a tough conversation. We don't have to be going to the graveyard, right? We can be going to a fun plane ride. That could be fun. And so I tried to where I could balance those scales a bit to make it more, because a lot of people say I cried a lot, but it wasn't sad. I never felt like depressed in this book. And that's what we were working on. I wanted to take it from a book which on face value has heavy themes and certainly a lot of sadness, but it doesn't just make you like a puddle of tears and make you just like not enjoy the experience of reading it, right? So that was the biggest thing. And then a lot of it was just tightening. So I had to cut things. And then also she wanted me to add some things too. And so it was funny because working on with all these different editors, people have different opinions. A lot of this is opinion based. And so I had an editor who had me cut a scene where Jane is a newborn because I had also a scene where Thomas is a newborn. And she felt, I think rightly so, that they kind of do the same thing. They're a little repetitive, but you see her struggling in two ways. And so I pulled the scene of Jane as a newborn and I kept the scene of Thomas as a newborn. And then I got to my in-house editor and she said, you know what I'd really love? I feel like we need a scene with Jane as a newborn. And I was like, oh, fantastic. I have this scene. And I like split it right in. And so there was some of that where I had done so much writing that in the final edits, I was actually pulling from things I had cut. Or I was taking things like there was an entire scene of a Christmas they had as kids. When the kids were kids. So like when the three children were kids. And I had that entire scene played out, the one where Jane and she plays piano for her mom and they sing. And so I had that entire scene as the scene and I cut it completely, but I kept it just as a memory. So I kept it as a memory that they have that they refer to, but you don't actually see the scene. So sometimes all that extra writing I did allowed me to just put little moments that they know about that we don't see on the page, but you get to hear about. So that was like a really helpful part of the process as well.
You know, you're talking about something where you say, like, I had this version, I had this version. So when they say pull this out again, and you know where to pull it from, where was it? In another Word document? Like, what were you writing in? To just give us a little background on that too. It's interesting. Like, I would have lost it, believe me. You know?
Yeah.
I
I don't cut for that reason. So I keep a graveyard document of everything I cut. That way, if there's an opportunity to add it back in, I have it because you'd be surprised. There was a few times where I needed to put something back in, or one of the other things, like when you were asking about that, my editor wanted, when she said I wanted more moments of lightness, that's where I came up with that party idea, which happens at the end, this sort of living funeral party scene, which was completely fresh in the final draft, basically first draft to the printer. And but there were lines of things that I had cut from previous drafts that I still really liked, and they didn't work in other places, but I was able to thread them through. So I took a lot of like my best ofs that were in the graveyard document, and then I was able to pepper them through. Even though the scenes didn't work or they weren't going to move the needle, I didn't get to lose all my favorite lines. So that was, I think, if there are any writers listening, I would absolutely keep a graveyard document where you just, because you never know. And you don't want to say, oh, I had that line and what was it? You know, and you can't quite get it the same way. So keep your drafts, keep your things that you cut. It's hard to stay organized. But I just work in Word. It's a very bare bones operation.
Using Word the whole time. You weren't using okay. And would you do that again?
Yeah.
Would you do that again?
I am doing it again. Yeah, I am. I know there's fancier ways and I'm sure that they're better, but I'm a no frills kind of. Yeah, I feel like I don't want to take the time. I have such limited time with like a newborn and all these things. to learn a program is taking time away from
Mhm.
the actual writing of the thing. And so it feels like stalling. And it sounds like something I should just like learn the program. I don't have to do the writing. I can just learn the program. And so, yeah, it seems like to me, that's the best use of my time. And so I just work in Word.
Well, let's put it this
Maybe
way.
one day.
I put a lot of things in drafts in email. The other day I looked, I have 385 drafts in my email. And I'm like,
Oh, Carol,
okay,
no.
where's the opener? Like, oh, you have these notes for the opener. So Tom Donadio, our editorial director, knows it's like Thursday night, I'll start writing the opener. I'm like, okay, where are all those notes to? And so now I've learned to put like newsletter draft or something so I can
Yeah.
find, but it's like it might be a recipe. It's a mess. It
Yeah.
really is. Learning a new program. No. We'll just use it.
Yeah.
Tom, what
It
else do you
really is
have?
fast. Yeah, it is so fascinating to hear all of the behind the scenes of the process, and also thank you for sharing those insights. Very,
Of
very interesting.
course.
Mary Lou says, I so love the cover. Do you feel
Mhm.
comfortable saying what town was your childhood beach town in Connecticut? No worries if not.
Oh, sure. So it's Westbrook, Connecticut, which is like not really on the map. It's just this town that you know if you spend time there. But it's really like any town, it's that has its special places because they're nostalgic to you. And the cover is actually that's a special story as well. And it's a real painting. It's an original painting. It's an Australian artist. And I have the painting in my house now. I bought it from her, and she was so sweet that yeah. I wish I could show you, but she painted a variation as well of the cover. And so she sent me both. She said, I painted a second and I couldn't bear to have them parted. So I sent you both. And so they're hanging above my mantle in my family room, and the whole room is styled around the cover. So it's very, very special.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
Question from Pam. She says, I listen to audiobooks for most novels and think a great audio narrator can really bring a book to life. Do you listen to audiobooks, and how did you pick your narrator? Now, I know in this case it's narrators because there are several people narrating the audio.
Yeah, so yeah, I was so lucky in that case to get five narrators. So for anyone who didn't do the audiobook, each character has their own narrator, which is rare. It's really cool to get that opportunity. So I did pick my narrators. I got to pick from a list, and the narrators that I picked are like very well known and very well respected, and so they don't like try out, right? You just sort of listen to samples of them doing other things, and then you try to hope that they are going to do similar things in your book. So it's a little bit of guesswork, but I was so pleased with how it all turned out. And I actually got to meet the narrator for Evelyn. Is Andy Arndt is her name, and I met her at a conference. So I got to hug her, and she's my Evelyn, and that was so sweet. But I have listened to the entire thing. I listened to it on my book tour. I toured in the US, up and down the East Coast, and my husband and I got to go, and the kids stayed home, and it was so lovely. And so it was great. We listened to it on the way down, and it was such an out of body experience listening. It was so bizarre. These are people I made up and have been living with alone for so long, and now someone else is reading the story to me. It's unreal. It's an amazing experience. But I've heard a lot of really good things about the audiobook, so it's not just a biased opinion that's it's a great, narration. They did a beautiful job.
I want to jump in here with something else too, because you're talking about the United States. Let's talk about how this book has sold around the world, because that's really
Yeah.
interesting as well, especially your big sales in Germany. I mean, really, like crazy. And to think about these characters resonating that much around the world.
Yeah, so the most unexpected, insane part of this experience for me was the international success this book has had. So this book has been translated in over 20 languages. It's became an international bestseller last summer. I actually got to go with my entire family. So I just had two kids at the time. I actually got pregnant on book tour. So we're very, very, very new to this new little baby. But my two kids and my mom and my mother-in-law and my husband all went to Germany. And so we got to be there for the launch of that book. And it was on billboards all over Germany in like 18 German cities. And I got to meet my publishers there. And then I got to go to London and be there for that launch. And then I also did the US tour. And getting messages from people from all over the world has been the most remarkable. I don't even have the words for it, how it feels. People who live in entirely different places and live and speak in entirely different languages who say like, you wrote my place. This is like my special place. And this is like my family. This is like my story. You wrote my love story. It's been really unbelievable. And so I don't take any of that for granted. I feel very lucky. It does not happen. And really it doesn't happen to debuts. And so, yeah, it's been this incredible ride.
Think about that story around the world. Like, think about,
Yeah.
it's really crazy. Really, really a good
Yeah.
crazy. A good crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we have this question from Linda. I love how engaged you are with the creative process. And as a reader, I resonate with the background hum of the author behind the characters and the world of the novel. How do you feel about the use of AI in the generation of literature? And how could
Mm.
this change as we, as readers, engage with a narrative?
I think I feel the way all authors feel, which is we want nothing to do with it, right? But I also feel that I'm not going to spend any mental energy on it. I know that it's here and it is, it's nothing that we can escape, but I also know that human brain is too strange to be matched by AI. I think the ideas that people come up with are always going to be better. If you were to pitch Hamilton, AI could never come up with Hamilton, right? Like that is such a bizarre concept, and then became this insane success. So I don't ever believe that that's going to replace real human minds who come up with the craziest things. So yeah, I don't. I have like a pretty like bulletproof mindset when it comes to a lot of things in this industry, and that's one of them. I just don't think about it. Don't worry about it. It's not my job to worry about it.
Do you know what's really interesting is when we started this company almost 30 years ago, the internet was like here and it was going to start making this little tiny go like this. I remember when we started on AOL and they went to 600,000 members and then a million.
Hmm.
But I feel like AI has been the spike like this. And I think that that's where it's so disconcerting because it
Hmm.
wasn't gradual. I feel like all of a sudden one day AI was doing all interpretations on Google. All of a sudden this was happening like this. And
Hmm.
I think that
Hmm.
it's come on to us a lot more quickly and a lot more painfully than
Hmm.
anything else that's happened. I mean, the Gutenberg press, anything going back in time, I don't think happened,
Right.
evolved as quickly as this has. And everybody wants
Yeah.
in on it because it's money. I mean, it's just the craziest thing. Remember,
Yeah.
David Baldacci he was in front of Congress a couple weeks ago, and he said, if you put all my books into AI, they could write another book of mine because there's
Mm.
so much background there of what's going on. It's very disturbing, but I agree with you. I like that you
Yeah.
just put it in the vault and you don't think about it. That's a good idea.
Yeah. And I don't mean to dismiss it. I know it's a major issue. It's not something that I personally can spend mental energy on and still try to create myself, right? You
Yeah.
can't sit here and worry if you're getting replaced and then try to still write another book. So it's not something that I can worry about, but I also recognize that it is something that a lot of people are working really hard to make sure authors are protected. And so it is really important.
And that actually wraps up the Q&A. We have no more questions.
There we go. There we go. Well,
Amy, yeah,
let's,
thank
Thank you
you
all so
so
much.
much for answering the readers' questions.
so I've
Thank
got
you for
one
your
more.
wonderful questions. Yeah.
You're talking about what's next. So you're working on
Mm.
something? You're working on something
I
between like
am.
naps and pickup?
I know. I'm very, very in very beginning stages of putting my toes into a new project. When I was in that deep bout of postpartum depression, after my second son, I actually wrote a draft of a novel. So, has anyone ever heard of NaNoWriMo, uh, National Novel Writing Month? It is
Mhm.
a movement where writers write a novel in a month. And that's actually how I wrote my drawer book back in college. You just write kind of like a crappy first draft of a book. And so I did that in 2021. So I was already working on The Days I Loved You Most. I had my second son, and I just felt like I needed something that was mine. And so I wrote a draft of another book, and I just kept getting rejections on The Days I Loved You Most. And I felt like I couldn't put all my eggs in one basket. And so I worked on that, and then I got more progress and sort of things were moving forward with The Days I Loved You Most. So I shelved that project temporarily, but I'm back at it. So I have a very, very, crappy first draft of something that is sort of loosely what the book will be. And it's so fun to get back into it, but it is like very early days. And so it's totally different. It's not at all the same, is all I can really say. But it's not a sequel. It's not related. It's not the family. It's not the beach town. It's completely different. But I really hope it is something that I want to always write about, like identity and what speaks to people and universal themes. And so that, and the writing will always be that. If you enjoy the writing and the voice, that will always be there. But yeah, it's a totally new adventure.
Well, we look forward to it, and we know we're going to have to wait a couple of years.
Me too.
But we're looking forward to it.
Not 10 years. Not 10 years. Not 10 years. That's what I promise. Yeah.
And next time you can go on book tour by yourself. You'll be ready, like, okay,
Yes.
wait, I'm going on book tour,
Yeah, exactly. Yes. And hopefully not pregnant this time. I did like half of my events, like so sick. And, I just was like trying to hold it together. But yeah, it's been just like the craziest couple of years. And I just feel so grateful for the response and people reading and these characters meaning something to people. So thank you for reading. Thank you for your time tonight. Thanks for tuning in. And Carol, thank you for having me. It's been lovely.
It's always so much fun to talk to you. I don't get to do it enough. And I'm so glad we got to bring you to a wider audience tonight, and they got to hear about the book as well. So thank you for joining us. And let's see, maybe everybody's asleep now and you can just go have a drink. What do you think? Do you think everybody's asleep in your house?
I hope so. I mean, my husband's been in charge, but yeah, it's none of my business what's been happening out there. But they should all be asleep.
They should all be asleep by now.
Yeah,
so look
they
forward to
should.
seeing you next time. You'll be back with your next book for sure. So thank you so much
All
for
right,
joining
Carol.
us.
Thank you all so much. Have a great night.
And to everybody else, I want to just give you a few more notes about what's coming up because we've got some announcements. Tonight's event is going to be available on YouTube, get us to the beginning of next week, and be on the podcast soon. And we'll alert you when that's live. We've also created a new events page on TBR Network where you can sign up for all of our programs. And we've got a lot of fun things to announce. Our next Bookaccino Live Book Group program will be on Wednesday, October 22nd. Our guest will be Paula Hawkins, and we will be discussing her thriller, The Blue Hour. So please note that there's currently a contest on Reading Group Guides right now where you can win copies of The Blue Hour for your book group. That contest is open until Wednesday, October 8th. We'll get the books out to you, and then you could be part of this conversation with your book group, or you can just join us if you've read the book on your own. For November, we're going to give you a little heads up on this one early. Our Bookaccino Live Book Group will be held on Wednesday, November 19th at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, not at 8 in the evening, and there's a reason. Our guest is going to be the author of Broken Country, Claire Leslie Hall, and she's joining us from the UK to discuss the book, and our regular 8 p.m. timing would have her joining at 1 a.m. So as a result, we're moving it to 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Once again, video will be available later. And our next event will be our October Bookaccino Live Book Group book preview event, which is going to be held on Wednesday, October 8th at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Sign up for everything is available now on events at the Book Report Network, and sign up for events at Book Report Network newsletter so you never miss anything. And one more reminder, we have more than 230 Book Reporter Talks to interviews with authors available on our YouTube channel and the Book Report Network for wherever you listen to podcasts. So just find the Book Report Network, and that's where everything is, including an earlier interview that I did with Amy when the book first came out. Hope you've enjoyed this evening as much as we did. Really appreciate your time and your joining us. We know that there's lots that you could be doing on a Thursday evening, and we know we had to make change and go off our usual Wednesday timing on this. So thank you very much for joining us, and have a lovely evening. Good night now.